Stop scrolling, because there is a chance your brain is still reacting to danger that ended years ago. And the worst part is, you do not even notice it. You think this is just stress, or overthinking, or just how you are. But what if that is not true? What if your nervous system is still living in a version of your life that no longer exists? A version where something felt unstable, unpredictable, or overwhelming. And your body never got the message that it is over. So even right now, in this moment, nothing is happening. And still, your system is slightly prepared for impact. Not panic, not fear, just a quiet internal tension you stopped questioning. And if that sounds familiar, keep watching. Because what you are dealing with is not just thoughts. It is a survival system that never switched off. This does not happen suddenly. It builds slowly, so slowly that it starts to feel like personality. You do not wake up one day and feel different. You just become someone who is slightly tense, slightly tired, slightly distracted, slightly always on. And because you still function, you assume this is normal. But functioning is not the same as being regulated. Now here is something most people never consider. Your brain does not actually care about time. It cares about patterns. So if a certain emotional state lasted long enough in your life, your brain does not store it as something that ended. It stores it as something that defines the environment. And that means it can continue reacting to it even when it is no longer there. That is why you can look at your life and logically know everything is fine, but still feel like something is slightly off. Not because something is wrong, but because your system is not updating based on logic. It updates based on repetition and emotional intensity. Now there is something else that keeps the system running that almost nobody talks about. Your brain is not only reacting to danger or stress, it is reacting to internal expectation loops, meaning it constantly predicts what your next internal state should feel like. And when that prediction does not match reality, even slightly, your system tries to correct it immediately. Not because something is wrong, but because mismatch itself feels like instability. This is why even good moments can feel strange sometimes. You are supposed to feel relaxed, but something inside still feels active. You are supposed to feel fine, but your body does not fully agree yet. And instead of questioning the system, most people try to override it. They distract themselves, they move faster, they think more, they stimulate more, not because they are avoiding life, but because they are trying to align internal prediction with internal feeling. And here is where something very subtle happens. Your system starts prioritizing consistency over accuracy. It would rather stay in a familiar state, even if that state is tense, than shift into an unfamiliar one, even if that one is calm. Because consistency feels predictable, and predictability feels safe, even if it is uncomfortable. So over time, your nervous system chooses familiarity over relief. And that decision becomes automatic. You do not notice it happening, but it shapes how you respond to almost everything. Now let's slow this down even more. There are moments during your day where nothing external is happening at all. No task, no demand, no pressure, just a pause. And in that pause, your system has a choice. It can settle, or it can search. And most systems like this choose search. Not because they are broken, but because search feels like control. And this is why stillness is not experienced as stillness. It is experienced as uncertainty without structure. And the brain does not like structureless states. So it immediately tries to create structure again. Through thinking, through planning, through checking, through movement. Now here's another layer that keeps everything looping. Your brain does not measure safety in absolute terms. It measures it relative to your internal activity level. So if your baseline is always slightly activated, then that becomes your reference point for normal. And anything below it feels unfamiliar, even if it is actually calmer. That is why sometimes people do not recognize when they are safe, because safety does not match their internal baseline. So instead of feeling relief, they feel uncertainty. And uncertainty pushes the system back into activity. Now let's go deeper into how this shows up in daily experience. There is something very subtle that happens constantly throughout the day. You finish something. And instead of a sense of completion, there is a shift. What next? What now? What should I do? Not because something is required, but because your system does not fully register completion. It immediately moves forward, and this creates a life that feels like constant transition, but never arrival. You're always moving between things, but rarely fully inside them. Even rest feels like a transition state, not a destination. Now here is something important. Your brain is not reacting to events. It is reacting to probability. What could happen next? What might go wrong? What should be prepared for? And if your past contained enough unpredictability, your system starts to apply that expectation everywhere, even where nothing supports it. so you can be in a completely safe environment and still feel slightly alert. Not because anything is wrong, but because your system is still scanning. And this scanning is not something you choose. It runs automatically, like background processing that never fully shuts down. Now this affects something deeper than thoughts. It affects attention itself. Your attention stops resting. It starts monitoring. Even when you think you are relaxed, part of you is still evaluating. What next? What could change? What am I missing? So even calm moments feel slightly unstable, not because they are unstable, but because your attention is never fully allowed to settle inside them. Now let's talk about something very common in modern life. Constant micro-switching, phone checking, task switching, small interruptions. None of it feels important. But together it creates a system where attention never fully stabilizes. And without stability, there is no reset. Your nervous system resets through stillness. But stillness is exactly what this system avoids. Because when nothing is happening externally, internal signals become more visible. And that visibility feels uncomfortable. So the brain replaces stillness with stimulation. That is why reaching for the phone feels automatic. Not because you want it, but because it changes your internal state. Even briefly, a small reduction in tension. And the system learns that pattern, so it repeats it. Over time, repetition becomes baseline, and baseline becomes invisible, so you stop noticing the tension itself. You only notice its effects. Restlessness, distractibility, fatigue. Now here's something deeper. When your brain stays in prediction mode long enough, attention becomes divided. Part of you is present, part of you is monitoring, part of you is anticipating, so nothing is fully experienced. Everything is partially processed. That is why days can feel short in memory, even when they are full in activity, because attention was never fully inside any single moment long enough for it to register. And this creates a very specific internal feeling. Life feels like motion without depth, action without full presence. Now here is where identity starts to form. Because when a state repeats long enough, your brain begins to treat it as definition. So instead of saying, I feel anxious, you start saying, I am anxious. I am like this. I have always been like this, but this is not identity. It is repetition without interruption. Now here's the part most people try incorrectly. They try to fix this through control. They try to think differently, relax harder, stop thoughts, manage the mind. But control is part of the same system. It keeps attention in monitoring mode, so nothing actually exits the loop. Now here's what actually matters. The system does not change through force. It changes through experience. Repeated experience of nothing going wrong when you are not controlling everything. Repeated experience of silence that does not lead to danger. Repeated experience of stillness without correction. At first, this feels wrong, because your system is not used to non-prediction states. So it interprets them as risk, not because they are risky, but because they are unfamiliar. Now here is a deeper layer that almost nobody notices. Your brain does not close emotional or cognitive loops automatically. It keeps them active until they feel resolved. But modern life rarely gives full resolution. Everything stays partially open. Messages, tasks, thoughts, emotions. So your system never fully resets. And when a system never resets, tension becomes baseline. Not because something is wrong now, but because nothing is ever fully finished internally. Now here's something even more subtle. Your brain treats unfinished signals as active importance. So even small, unresolved things keep pulling attention back, not loudly, but persistently. And that creates constant background load, even in rest, even in silence. Now zoom out. Your nervous system is not trying to harm you. It is trying to keep you prepared. But preparation without real threat becomes permanent tension. And permanent tension becomes invisible over time. Now this is the key shift. You are not reacting to what is happening now. You are reacting to what your system expects based on what used to happen. And those expectations can stay active long after the environment changes. So even if nothing is wrong in your life right now, your body might still behave like there is. Not because it is true, but because it is not updated yet. And when that update finally starts happening, it does not feel dramatic. It feels like space between thoughts, space between reactions, space between impulse and response. And slowly that space becomes the new normal. Not because life changed, but because your system stopped living inside an outdated prediction of danger. And maybe that is the real point of all of this. Your brain is not broken. It is just still protecting a version of you that no longer exists. And the moment it realizes that, you do not become someone else. You just stop living in constant internal emergency that was never actually happening in the present moment. And the moment it realizes that, you do not become someone else. You just stop living in constant internal emergency that was never actually happening in the present moment. So if you felt a shift while watching this, do one small thing right now. Take one deep, slow exhale. Hold it for a second. Your brain needs to see that you are safe enough to breathe, that you are safe enough to pause. If this resonated with you, leave a dot or a comment below to let your system acknowledge this moment of update. And follow if you're ready to start living in the present again.